I don't get to yell at my parents and tell them how I feel about things in a disrespectful, rude way, right? There's a way to have that emotional conversation back and forth where it's a respectable way. And so we'll talk about later how to kind of do that, or how we help children younger to do that. And we'll talk about it a lot if you come back in February with our tweens and teens. We really see it there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hillary Ade, and I am a Youth Services Librarian at the Daniel Boone Regional Library. Catherine Miller is here to present for us tonight. She is the Program Coordinator for the Triple P program. The Positive Parenting Program is a multi-level system of family intervention designed to reduce behavioral and emotional problems and is part of the Boone County Early Childhood Coalition. This evening, Catherine will talk to us about how to help younger children be resilient. There will be a second session focused on helping teens and tweens on February 6th. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and Catherine and I will get to them. I'm going to bow out. Let Catherine go for it. Thank you for being here tonight, Catherine.
Hi, thanks everyone. So welcome everybody. Tonight we are going to talk about raising resilient children. And as Hillary said, if there's any thing you specifically wanted answered, please go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll answer them afterwards. Other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we have done this seminar in the past, but it was kind of asked about again. I don't think we've done it post-COVID. And I think, so not that we want to bring up COVID constantly, but I think there is, children definitely, trying to find the right words, are still kind of bouncing back, right? We had years that things were very different. We offered a set of tolerance for things that maybe we didn't tolerate before. We just did things a little different. And so now that we say the world is like really back to normal, right? We don't really mention COVID much. We do still see people with masks on these days right now. But, it's not our everyday lives. It doesn't pop up in our everyday conversation. And so when we're talking about littles right now, we have a group of children that were born during COVID and things were very, very different for them. So I'll hit on this just a tiny bit, but we'll roll through this. I do want to point out with this seminar, things may look like they're spelled wrong, but this Triple P comes out of Australia. So they use S's differently. So you'll see some things that maybe look like it's misspelled, but really it's because of how they write in, it's from the University of Queensland. So we'll get started here. Maybe my slide will go. Oh, there we go. So we will talk about the emotional resilience in the children. We'll talk about what it takes to give you some building blocks for that success. There'll be a take-home message, and then we'll make sure that we have some time for questions. So it's really important for us to first talk about what do we think emotional resilience is. And so it is that ability to recognize, understand, and accept feelings, express feelings in appropriate ways, face and resolve difficult situations, cope with stressful and upsetting situations. And so these abilities are related to a child's development. So let's kind of break these down really quickly. So recognize, understand, and accept feelings. That last one's really important. Lots of times we tend to teach children the basic set of feelings. So you're sad, you're mad, you're happy, some of those basic things that we tend to forget or maybe don't focus on: embarrassed, disappointed. So those may seem like big words, and so we don't maybe use them with our littles. But what kind of happens is they don't know how to maybe name emotions. So I'll give you an example. Children are playing on the playground. They get ready to get on the swing. They don't pump their feet right, and they fall off the swing. And so the child is upset and starts crying. Well, someone says, well, you must be sad. Well, maybe they were really actually embarrassed because they fell off, but no one knows that word, not the child who wants to comfort their friend or the child who just had the incident happen because no one's really talked to them about that. So that's an example of where we really want to help children be able to recognize and understand things. And then the second step to that is to accept feelings. So what do we mean by that? So we want to give children the ability and chance to discuss their feelings and talk about their feelings, but we also have to give them like the acceptable platform to do that. So, I don't get to yell at my parent and tell them how I feel about things in a disrespectful, rude way, right? There's a way to have that emotional conversation back and forth where it's a respectable way. And so we'll talk about later how to kind of do that, or how we help children younger to do that. And we'll talk about it a lot if you come back in February with our tweens and teens. We really see it there. But accepting feelings also is being able to understand that you can bounce back from that. So you tell your child, I'm really sorry we're not having fruit snacks today. And they stomp their feet and they're like, I want fruit snacks. And so you're saying, oh, I know you're really sad or upset that you can't have fruit snacks, but we're not having fruit snacks today. I want fruit snacks. And again, you're saying, I realize we're really upset or we're really sad we're not having fruit snacks today, but we're not having fruit snacks. And so that is, they have to accept that that's how they feel because they're not having fruit snacks, but also have to accept what you just said, right? It's not going to happen. And so learning how to, where you validate their feelings, but then still stand on, just stand on it that we're not having those. So like understanding and accepting feelings, those two things kind of go together. And then being able to express their feelings in an appropriate way. So I kind of just gave you an example there, like maybe they're really upset and you're giving it back to them when you say, I really understand that you're upset or you're sad about not getting the fruit snacks. So you're validating them. Even though they may have stomped their foot and said it maybe loud, if it wasn't, disrespectful or they're not yelling in your face, like, we're still allowing them to express their feelings as long as they're doing appropriately. And then face and resolve difficult situations. So trying to think of something relatable. Oh, so we have friends over and we have our favorite toys because we had Christmas, or maybe you have bought new toys. You don't celebrate Christmas, but maybe you celebrate something and new toys came into your house. Maybe it's a birthday or something like that. And then a friend come over and they don't want to share. And so that is very stressful or upsetting because you as the parent may be saying, oh, we share with our friends. And the child is like, but I don't want to share my new toys. And so they're very stressed about like having to do that. And then they're very upset about that situation, which can create total chaos with, everyone there. So part of that is developmentally, we learn to do things differently as we get older. And the other part of that is, are we making sure the things that we are teaching or doing with our children are age appropriate? The caveat to that is it gets sort of hard as a parent to remember what's age appropriate after kind of the first one. So, the first one, you're looking at milestones and you're trying to make sure they're making milestones. Add the second child in. And so maybe you're still doing that with, charting the first one, keeping track of the second one, but throw a third one in there. And you're like, shouldn't they be able to do that by now? I think the other one was doing that by now. Like we just sort of stopped to forget when children do that. You ever been to a doctor's appointment? Like what's their kindergarten doctor's appointment? And they're like 5. And if it's not your pediatrician you've been with forever, but you're just doing that kindergarten check. And they're like, when did they start walking? And you're like, I think this one started walking at like, I don't know, 10, 11 months. And the doctor's like, looking at you like, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, me neither. Something like that. Sometimes we just forget like, what our kids are doing and when they did them. So making sure that we are making requests of children that are developmentally appropriate. All right. So why is resilience important? So children must learn to cope with everyday feelings. So both the positive ones and the negative ones, such as excitement, anticipation, frustration, and disappointment. So those are all words that, right, we don't use much. Do we teach excited? Sometimes we'll say things like, you must be so excited about going on the trip. But frustration, maybe you're very frustrated. You can't open that. Disappointed. I think as we children get older, we may say like, oh, that's very disappointing. You didn't get invited to that birthday party. You know, like that's very disappointing. Your show is over. We may use that. I will say sometimes I see parents like use sad instead of disappointed. You're really sad your show is over. So again, just the usage of words. Some children experience very stressful life events, such as preparing for, as we get older, the tweens and teens will be preparing for exams. But littles, like, so maybe you didn't win when you were playing and learning that disappointment for not winning the game if they're in a little sport. They're also learning how to manage relationship with their friends. They're learning friends. I often talk about parents that children struggle learning how to make friends sometimes because the first friends we give them are usually family, maybe it's cousins, or it's our friends' children, right? Or it's people we know. And so they are pre-introduced to people, but then they get ready to go to preschool or they go to school and we're like, okay, make some friends. And so sometimes children do it well, other children really kind of struggle. So, those are those abilities to be able to have those social skills and build relationships. Some children have very upsetting things happen to them also, and they're able to work through them or bounce back to them. Sometimes it's a separation of parents, sorry, or maybe a divorce. Perhaps there's a death in the family that you have to work through. Even a loss of a pet is very hard on a kid. So it's important for children to learn how to cope through their experiences. Children's ability to cope with their feelings is important to like their long-term happiness and emotional well-being and success. So if you can learn these skills early, you just get better at those skills, sorry. And then when we are going into young adulthood or adulthood, we're able to express our feelings and emotions in a positive way to those around us so that they can help us either be resilient or work through like the things that we're going through. So again, it's like important for that development of social skills, relationship with others. We have to learn that tolerance and compassion with other people. That is most definitely something that's kind of taught. The ability to cope with life experiences and stresses. And then we want to work and help prevent emotional problems with and sometimes for our children. All right. So what's the benefit of children? For children to be emotionally resilient? So they're caring and socially skilled, so they can start to recognize feelings of their peers. This is when they learn to go comfort their peers. Maybe a peer falls down outside playing and they go and help them up and then give them a hug. They're really learning how to be caring, and they may have learned that through what they've seen at home. So how do you care for your child when they're hurt? Oftentimes kids will mimic that. I've seen littles on the playground like give other littles kisses, and I know that's just the germ sharing of it all, but because their mom or dad gives them kisses. So that's what they know, and that's how they mimic it. Children learn how to manage their feelings and move through like negative feelings so that they can be better again. So those things, and they're able to cope with the stress of things. They're able to cope with stress and unpleasant experiences, and then they're less likely to resort in unhelpful ways of coping. So what might look like unhelpful ways of coping? So relying on others to fix their problems, being unable to move through a situation. So think about the kid that has a bad day and can't move through that bad day, and it's not over with until they go to bed. So those are the kids that we want to help to become emotionally resilient. So we'll take it. I mentioned that we would look at these building blocks. So I think we've kind of went through them, but we'll recognize and accepting feelings, expressing feelings appropriately. We're building a positive outlook, and we're developing coping skills. And then we're dealing with those negative feelings and those stressful life events. These are skills that can be encouraged and developed as a child. So let's look at the first block in a little more detail, that recognizing and accepting feelings. So gradually, children learn to recognize and understand their emotions and those of others. Again, parents and their siblings, maybe a child care provider, or, their peers at school. Those are the first people to kind of teach them that, especially like their parental units or those who are raising them. That's where we learn facial expressions. And if you start to think about it, when children are little, right, we talk to them and we really show our expressions because we know babies will mimic and respond to that. So think about how you lay the baby down and you're in their face and you're like, hi, how are you? What are you doing? You really talk to them and try to get them to do it, because then what does a baby do? They look at you and they move and they try to open their mouths and they try to talk back to you. So, like in the very beginning, we are encouraging them to start talking to them and understanding, like, we say things in our voice to inflect how we want them to react. We wouldn't like look at the baby and be like, how are you today? I see you. Right? Because that would not invoke kind of the baby to respond to you. Instead, we say things in that pleasant tone. We're very happy, maybe sounding very loving. So we're like, how are you? What are you doing? Let me see those feet. Do I see your hands moving? We're really trying to get them to engage in us. So think about, do we do that longevity, right? So, when your 7-year-old comes in, you're probably not using that same baby voice, but are you asking them, how are they doing? How is their days? What happened today? We want kids to become aware of different feelings that they may have, and learn the words to describe their feelings. So I kind of mentioned that in the beginning. Are we teaching kids to be able to know those feelings? I will have Hillary tap in later some good feelings books that the library has to help teach other types of feelings and emotions. Because our feelings get more complex as we get older. Learning words to describe their feelings. So this developmental progression is related to a child's language, thinking, and their experiences. For example, compare a toddler's frustration and tantrum to when we get to those teenage years, right? And a tantrum may look the same but different when teens are having like that social anxiety or trying to learn that self-searching. They may shut down, they may be not talk to you. But those are, frustration moments that kids are having. It's just how they express it maybe differently. So we're looking at those more complex feelings. These changes are related to, again, their language, their thinking, and their experiences. So what can you do as a parent? So accept that there are ups and downs. That's all normal. Talk with your kids about their feelings. If you ever meet with me, and I'll talk about how you can do that in the end, we talk about talking about what are 2 things that went well in your day and what's one thing you wish went better. And I always say you wish went better because that gives them the chance to talk to you about things they may not have brought up. Sometimes we don't want to talk about things that we see as negative, but if we can talk about them in a way to say how we wished it could have done differently, that gives opportunity to open the doors for conversation. When that conversation is happening, be emotionally expressive to your kids. So respond in a way that it says, I'm listening to you. I want you to keep talking to me. If they're talking about their emotions or something, recognize them and kind of pair them with that. And maybe talk to them about the reasons for their feelings. Why are you feeling that way today? Do you think, why did that happen? So, also making sure you're emotionally expressive yourself. So children learn a lot about emotions by watching their parents' face, their gestures. These kind of things provide clues about how someone is feeling. And then making sure we're talking about our own feelings. So sometimes you may tell a story to your child about a time you were very upset about something or you were sad about things. So talking about your own feelings and sharing stories really can help your child to relate to you. And then you can help maybe move them through their own feelings with like an example of ways that of things that you did. So help your child recognize and label their emotions. So when your child shows an emotion, you may ask them how they feel. If they can't tell you, then you can try to describe that emotion for them. So like maybe they're working on a puzzle and they're really, really struggling. And you could say, oh, it looks like that puzzle may be hard for you. You might feel frustrated that you can't get the pieces. So you're introducing a new word, frustrated, and they compare that with the feeling they're feeling right now, not being able to find the right pieces and putting that together. So that's a good way to help kids learn about those new feelings and emotions and pair them with the actual example or time that it's going through. You can encourage children to be emotionally expressive also through books, stories, fantasy play, drama. You can do art, music, just really learning how to get with themselves in music. We'll talk next week, and when not next week, next month with the teens and tweens. You know, like musics can learn to calm broken hearts and things like that. Music plays a big part in many people's lives. All right. And then, of course, continue to encourage your child to be emotionally expressive. All right, that second building block. So expressing your emotions. So what expression is okay? So, you know, their words, their actual expressions, and their actions. When is it okay to express those feelings? To whom? How often? How much? Who should they talk to? Helping kids or children to realize that. Children also need to learn what types of emotional expressions are not okay, such as so being affectionate with someone they don't know very well. So you may have a child that's very social and very loving, and so they may want to, you're in the grocery store and they may want to go hug a stranger. And so you want to talk to them about why maybe that isn't a great idea to hug people we don't know. And on the flip side, we don't attempt to make children hug people that they don't know, right? So you go, the holidays are a good example of that. And you're going to see family that you know well, but your child doesn't. And you're like, go give so-and-so a hug. Your kid's like, I don't know them, right? So if we're telling them to hug strangers in family situations, then not telling them to hug strangers in the grocery store, we're kind of creating maybe some misunderstanding with those children, because those are strangers to them, even though you know them and it's in a family environment. Those are still strangers to them. So, you know, making sure we're not confusing our children. Talking about how to express their feelings in an appropriate way. So you don't want them losing control, yelling, or hurtful actions with it. So that hitting of others or really hurting, we talk about how that's not acceptable. We want to talk about acceptable ways of expressing emotions. And sometimes that's related to cultural things or family expectations. So making sure that that makes sense to do, or helping them through what you guys do culturally as a family. Just kind of making sure that your kids are learning as they go. It's also important to children to learn about, you know, at a young age, do we have family things that we do? How do we go to events such as like a wedding or a birthday party, or, you know, whatever your family may do, or whatever type of celebration there is? Like, how do you handle that? What's the appropriate emotions or things they should be doing? All right. So as parents, what are some things that we do that maybe can become a trap? So perhaps we're talking too much about our own feelings. So maybe, you know, you come home and, oh, so wait, let me pause. An example of this. Sometimes we forget that our children are listening. So if you're the type that talks about your day when you pick up the kids, they're hearing everything negative or everything that didn't go so well, like maybe that's oversharing. But we forget, because technology, you get in a car, your best friend, mom, sister, brother, whoever is on the phone, and you just start talking, right? It's surround sound and they hear everything, but maybe you didn't realize it because, we're supposed to be hands-free with everything. So the kids are a part of that, but do they need to be a part of that is the question. So let's make sure we're not dwelling on upsetting events or experiences. So teaching children that you too can move on from things. Showing too much interest in how a child feels. So that may seem like, how do I do that? But like you're constantly asking them, is this okay? Did you do this today? Did your teacher say that today? So that can often overwhelm a child. Showing, so another thing that we might do when you're being over sympathetic or encouraging avoidance, we don't want to accidentally reward children for being upset or being overly sympathetic or encouraging. So what does that mean? They're having a bad day and, you're like, oh, you've talked about it, but then you're like, every time they have a bad day, you say, let's go get a treat from somewhere. Let's go do this. So then they may pair it, and I say may because sometimes it's okay to say let's go. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. My office is down the street from Seven Brew, and it's a bit busy. So let's stop by Seven Brew and get your favorite drink. And so sure, absolutely. But if every time they're upset, you think you have to fix it by going to get something or being able to provide them with something, then they don't learn how to overcome those emotions on their own. You as a parent, so overreacting to minor upsets, the child spills the milk and you're overly frustrated. Or, you tell them, okay, I would like to they want a bowl of cereal and you are doing something. And you say, just a minute and I'll be able to help you. Instead of listening, they go to get the cereal themselves. It drops on the floor and spills. And then you're yelling at them. I told you I would get it for you. I don't know why you're over here doing this yourself. And so, although the situation, they did not listen to you, in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of a minor thing. But then they've learned to not try things on their own because they may upset you and get in trouble. So helping them to understand, like, hey, mom or dad had asked you to wait. And the reason I asked you to wait is because, it was on the top of the refrigerator and I was worried that if you got it down, you might spill it, like that's happened. So when I ask you not to get things down, there's a reason for it. So helping them to understand why kind of you are saying the things that you're saying. I know you might come from a world that maybe taught you that children are just supposed to do as they're told with no understanding. I was absolutely raised at that, right? So your parent says, because I said so. But really helping kids to understand and put emotions together helps them be emotionally solid later because they understand the no, or they understand the why they shouldn't do that. And then not giving attention to other behaviors that are unnecessary. That planned ignoring sometimes when they're having a fit, we're just going to kind of let them work through it and not give attention to that behavior. All right, so let's look at some tips for encouraging children to express their feelings appropriately. There are a number of ways parents can kind of help children, feel comfortable when they're talking about their their feelings. So ask your child how they feel about things that are about to happen to them. So like talking about maybe the first day of school and getting those first day of school or preschool jitters out, naming some of the emotions they may be feeling and how to kind of work through them and cope with them. When your child starts to tell you about their experience or how they're feeling, actually kind of stop what you're doing, sit down, make sure you're giving them the attention that they need so that they feel heard and listened to and understood. And then you can kind of talk back to your child and, say what you thought you heard, so that they feel like you are listening to them. Try not to tell your child how they should feel. So you don't want to, unless they're struggling with finding an emotion, you don't want to name that emotion for them. You want them to try to come up with it their self so that they can start to pair their own feelings with words. You also don't want to diminish their emotions. So even though it may not be a big deal to you, it is to them, and we want to give them that respect, right? We don't want to say, oh, that's nothing. Why are you even worried about that? Because if it matters to them enough, then we want it to matter to everyone. All right, so you can also read stories and talk about the characters' feelings. Reading to your children is an awesome thing to do, and being able to go through the characters' feelings is very helpful. And so then you can also help your child recognize feelings in others. So maybe you're pointing out how another friend may have felt in school, or something that may have happened with a friend. You're talking to them about that. So you may say things like, I see how that would have made you feel upset, or I see how that might have made your friend feel that way when you talked about, such and such with them. And then asking your child often in the situation, how do you think the other person might have felt? So we want them to learn to recognize how their actions might impact another person. So let's be encouraging of our children. So give your child positive attention for expressing feelings in a positive way. This is important for both those positive and those negative emotions. So when your child is being generous, kind, or friendly, you would tell them, that was so great to see you sharing with your friends. Or if you see them laughing, oh, that was great to see you two joking together. Whose joke was that? Just really kind of engaging with it. If your child successfully deals with a difficult situation, such as being upset, or maybe they were teased, and they've worked through it, then congratulate them on how they handled the situation. All right, dealing with problems. So we as parents, one of the big things that happens is we're not consistent with our discipline. So maybe we've acknowledged their feelings, telling their so as parents, we need to decide how to deal with children when their upset feelings turns into anger or hurtful behavior. So using that consistent discipline, if your child expresses upset feelings in rude, hurtful, or disrespectful ways, and I'll give you an example. Try to think of one off the fly, not doing a good job. So you would want to acknowledge their feelings first. So I understand that you're feeling mad. I'm understanding that you're really upset about that. And then go into the problem behavior. But just, so let's say they were so upset that they hit something. So we would say, I understand that you're really mad and upset about that, but we don't hit or hurt in our household. So we want to acknowledge their feelings, but then tell them that their action wasn't okay for them to do. And then tell your child what's acceptable to do instead. So I know you're really upset. Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to turn on some music and dance it out? Do you want to sing it out? Try to change their emotions or things. So, so depending on the situation, a logical consequence or a quiet time or maybe a timeout might be a suitable backup if the behavior continues. So another thing that we can do is model better ways of expressing upset feelings. And you got to sometimes think about, like, is your kid modeling you? So if you get upset and you constantly yell or you curse and then your child does it, they're probably learning that from you. So making sure that you are staying calm and dealing with situations assertively, but respectfully. All right. So our third building block we'll go into, and so that's having a positive outlook. So having a positive outlook can involve that optimistic thinking, curiosity and exploration, and contentment. So children's feelings are often related to what they think about and tell themselves and the experiences they have. So parents can help children develop positive ways of thinking about themselves in the world by, having a positive outlook. You might think about it as that glass half full perspective. So we're talking to our kids to develop goals, to look for the positive in things. We're talking about achievements they may have had. So let's say they don't do well on the tests, but you're reminding them, hey, it's okay. You can bounce back from that. Do you remember when you got that high score? I know a lot of schools don't do spelling words anymore, but it used to be, you had spelling words at the end of the week and maybe they didn't do so well on one. So you're reminding them, do you remember last week when you got 9 out of 10? I think we can do it again. We'll just have to work a little harder this week. So you're really trying to encourage them that it can be better next time. And, kids want that sense of confidence and that sense of control over things. So reminding them that they can actually do it or things will get better is a positive. So we want kids to have curiosity and exploration in the world. So finding things to do rather than being bored or, having their life planned may be a good way to think about it. So, often children are so busy. So, it's almost like for today we have gymnastics and your brother has karate and we're going to the ninja lab. Like, kids' days are planned out. So does your child know how to fulfill their time and energy without you doing it or without it being like on screen? So like that's the go-to often for kids. They don't know what to do without a screen. I'm bored. Have we introduced reading? Have we introduced coloring? Have we introduced other things for them to do? Do they do any imaginative play? Do you have a bend for them that they can pretend they are a pirate or pretend they're something else? So many kids don't know what to do with themselves. We've had snow days. Were you planning the snow day? Did you plan all the activities? Or did you allow them to plan the activities? Was this a fort making day and they were underneath the fort doing things? All kinds of little things where you're allowing them to have control and explore life, basically. And that can bring like a sense of contentment to children when they can be involved and do things for themselves. All right, so encouraging optimism. So I kind of mentioned this. You want to make sure we're talking about the glass half full. If children hear lots of optimistic comments, they'll begin to think this way for themselves. So you can do it. We can try again. It's okay. Those kind of things. Encouraging your child to set goals and work out how to achieve them. So let's say they joined soccer and they didn't really do well. And so you talk about like, your goal. What's your goals with soccer? Do you want to make a goal, goals of soccer, and do you want to make a goal as in kick the ball in? And if so, what does that take? So maybe like they come home and practice every day for 20 minutes. So you're helping them to make a list of things on how to become better and then how you can help them through that. Encourage your child to use some initiative and be creative, and then you be that support, but they're thinking about how they can become better or do more on their own. That will help your child to understand that they have control over the event or they have control over the outcomes that they can make. And then you want to point out what your child does well and talk about the good side of things. So when they make it over the hump, when their practice, when they make that goal and you're like, oh, it worked out because you practiced and you did these things and look, you did make that goal. So making sure we point out what your child did well before you point out things that they could do better. We always want to be a bucket filler, versus a bucket emptier. So, that 2-to-1 ratio. So I actually like 3-to-1. So 3 positive comments before the negative comment so that they have more things in their bucket before you take things out. And then I think I mentioned this, talk about the good side of events and experiences. All right, just checking our time here. Encourage your child to decide. So we're encouraging, curiosity. So encourage your child to decide what to do. So that exploring, maybe they're building, like I mentioned today, maybe they're building blanket forts or they're making a Lego world. So let your child explore their interest in things. Let them be able to show you like what they create or what they have envisioned and kind of get into it with your kids. Oh, I see that's they built a Lego world castle and you're like, oh, I see the moat. I see that. Is this where the queen sits? Just really kind of talking to them about it. So asking questions, making comments, helping your child to understand it. And then you could teach your child how to find out more information, right? So we have a very Google rich world now. So maybe you're going to teach them more about castles, or you guys are going to come to the library and check out books on castles because they're very interested in them. And then encouraging contentment. Again, it's not your job to keep your children entertained 24/7. Also, we want to model being appreciative and grateful. So our children saying thank you when someone does something for them or gives them something. Ask your child to talk about, sharing family experiences. So ask your child to talk about the highlights of their day. And that's, again, where you pull in those, what 2 things went well today and what something you wish went better. Sometimes you want to discuss other people's points of view. So maybe a situation happened, they tell you about, and you may ask them, so how do you think the other person felt? Sometimes we have to talk about accepting things that can't be changed. Sometimes it's hard to accept. Trying to think of a good example for you. I don't know. It's bad I can't give you a good instant example. It didn't pop into my head. But so sometimes children don't realize like it's someone else's day. So like they have that star of the week or something like that, and your child's disappointed that maybe their turn hasn't come up. And so we would talk about, I understand that you're sad or disappointed that it's not your turn yet, but we should be happy that, about Jacob, and let's learn about Jacob and what kind of things did he present on his board. So even though our children are disappointed, we teach them to still look at the good and look at the other side of things, to accept what they do have and not dwell on things that they can't change. So we want to encourage children to be a part of meaningful activities. So that might be music, it might be sports, it might be clubs. It could be, if you're religious, maybe it's being a part of your church organizations, 4-H. I'm just throwing out things. But learning how to be involved in something is very good at building resilience for children. If you come back next month, with our tweens and teens, we'll really talk about friendships and learning how to keep friendships, because, that change into middle school, kids will see like 7 different classes and 7 different people. And so oftentimes they make new friends. Well, old friends get jealous, and how do you kind of measure that relationships and trying to work through that? So if you come back, we'll have like a more in-depth discussion on that. Encourage your child to slow down. How ironic that I needed to say that, right? Encourage your child to slow down sometimes and take time to just be still and take in the world around them. Just learn to be present, that we don't have to be occupied all the time. And that's really hard in the world today because, what do you do when you're bored, right? You're like, I don't know, I don't have anything to do. Let me pick up my phone. And now we're in our phone and we're missing things happening in the world. So, being present with our children and teaching them how to be present with themselves and their friends are important. All right. This 4th block, we're talking about problem solving, that positive self-talk, talking back to unhelpful thoughts, so things that we put into the world that's negative. We want to be able to teach our children how to relax mentally as well as physically, and then helping kids to realize that they can ask for help and support. That is very important of teaching at a young age. So how do we help them problem solve? So we also teach them that it's okay to ask for help. You don't know how to do something, you're struggling to put things together. I think my biggest personal thing I taught my kids was like, Google's our best friend. We don't always know how to do it. So let's figure out, let's watch a video on it, YouTube. Let's watch a video on how to do this and see where we met, where we went wrong or why it didn't work out how we thought it was. It's okay to ask for help. We want to play things that promote thinking. So board games, oops, sorry. Okay, there we go. Board games are always great to be able to play and talk through things. Memory, right? We're teaching them at a young age to turn things over. It's also a good reading help. So you're saying that's a frog. Where's the other frog? And they're looking for frogs. And then you want to prompt your child to work at problem solving. So not always stepping in and helping them figure it out or doing it for them. It's okay to let them struggle a little bit so that you can see their wheels turning and how they're going to figure it out. That's very good at an early age to get them to start doing it. A lot of kids are like, I can't do it, help me. And so they struggled for a tiny bit, or they try to zip their coat up and they couldn't. They're like, here, zip my coat up for me. Well, when they get to kindergarten, the teacher really doesn't have time to zip 25 coats. So how you haven't really helped your child struggle through that if every time they're like, help me, you just do it kind of for them. Congratulate your child when they are able to, zip their own coat or put on their own shoes. It's such a help for you. Get themselves dressed in the morning. We want to encourage those behaviors because eventually it's going to help you when they can get dressed and get out the door faster with you. And then if there's a problem in the house, how do we do that as a family? How do we problem solve with things going on in the household? So what and how do we problem solve? So we want to define the problem, come up with solutions, evaluate the options, decide on the best solution, then put the plan into action and review how it worked. Ironically, that's kind of what you do with me when we come in with parenting issues. We'll talk about almost exactly these steps on how we can work through problems that's going on in the household. All right, building that positive self-talk. So, asking your child to evaluate their own achievements, explain how thinking differently in different ways affects how you feel. So what do you put in the atmosphere? How do you start your day? How do we make sure that things are positive in our kids' worlds? And when we hear a lot of negative self-talk constantly, maybe that's sometimes a cry for help. And so that we need to make sure that we're checking our children's mental health too. And you can point out when things are helpful and unhelpful to them. And then, of course, model that using positive self-talk yourself to cope with that stress. How do you relax? So hard. How do you manage stress? So being able to help your children, maybe you need help with that too. So what are some good ways, strategies, taking slow, deep breaths, helping them relax their muscles, learning how to listen to music and just be still and relaxing, all things that's good for you and good for them. So maybe you say, hey, we're going to do this as a family. We're going to learn how to do deep breathing, and you get a video and a book about it, and you teach them how to do those things. Looking for support. So discuss how everyone needs to talk about how you get support from others and who some of those people are. So giving your kids some suggestions for that. All right, I'm flying through. We only have about 10 more minutes. So building block 5 is dealing with negative feelings. Equally important to talk about the negative feelings along with the positive feelings. So just remember, parents cannot completely protect their children from negative feelings or those feelings. So it's best to be able to just walk through them and work through them, right? Our days are not always positive. So there are going to be days where they have negative emotions. Kids can see negative emotions as something that we don't, such as like boredom, or maybe they're feeling lonely. Some other feelings that may be seen as negative, of course, anger might be one of them. They're dealing with anxiety, just disappointment. So they didn't get picked at school. They they weren't the line leader, just, little things that still are disappointments that we can accept and deal with, but how do we work through them? So again, you can calmly assist and prompt your child for that. And then encouraging your child to learn how to resolve those feelings on your own before you step in and give suggestion. Because oftentimes, like, emotions are short-lived, so they'll pass quickly without you having to step in, and your child has kind of already worked through it. But if you don't give them that chance to work through it, then they're constantly looking to you for solutions. So you can calmly assist and work through it if you think they need help, but allowing them the chance to do it on their own first. Very important. We could do a whole segment of this, of managing emotions. So recognize when your child is upset. So maybe you're going to stop what you're doing and pay attention to them and help them work through that. You can easily ask your child what's wrong and encourage them to tell you what's happening. And then you want to listen to what your child has said, and then maybe ask a question or two so you can clarify and they feel like you're listening to them. And then you want to kind of summarize what you heard to check like that you got it with them, that you understand. And if they say no, it's okay, right? You can say, well, tell me again, or I'm sorry, I didn't hear you the way you did. Help me understand, or help me understand how you're feeling. And then you want to acknowledge their feelings. Maybe if they're little, you're still helping them name that a feeling or emotion and let your child know it's okay to feel upset. Sometimes parents are dismissive of that, especially with littles. Like, why should they even really be upset with that? It's just a toy that broke, but maybe it was their favorite McDonald's toy and you can't go get it again because the toys change every couple of months, but we're dismissive because it was a McDonald's toy, get over it. But, we got to recognize that, they may really truly be sad about losing that McDonald's toy. You can ask your child how they would like to deal with the situation to get them to be problem solving as you want them to do. And they can come back. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, what's another solution? What's another thing you think we can try? So that's a good way to coach your children into problem solving. What's another idea? How do you think if you did it this way, what do you think might happen? So maybe if they can't come up with something, you give them kind of a solution for it. And then you want to stay calm and avoid getting angry and upset yourself, and make time later to talk with your child if like an incident has occurred and you both needed to take a kind of a timeout and a break for that. And then you want to prepare for emotions. So how do you do that? You set a good example. You may talk about your anxious feelings, teach your child those coping strategies we kind of talked about. Encourage your child to face fears gradually. So we may try it a little bit of something before we go full force into it. Stay calm, prompt those coping strategies, and then praise your child's efforts. And then, of course, if there's ever a dangerous situation that you want to talk about with younger kids, it's one that we always talk about is why they got to hold your hand when you're in a parking lot or not running across the street. Like, those might be some examples of that. And really quickly, we'll do this last one. So stressful life events. What can happen? So a change such as moving a house, changing schools, having the birth of a new baby. Maybe they're having problems, disappointed, they're having problems with their peers, unpleasant experiences. Again, we kind of mentioned it earlier, parent separation or divorce, joining a new family. So maybe they are now a blended family. Trauma, serious injury, maybe there's a natural disaster. So COVID was an example of that, and terrifying experiences. Trying to think of something. Sometimes like maybe they were chased by a dog, right? So the dog just wanted to play, the child wasn't used to it. And so the dog is chasing them to play, but the child thinks the dog wants to attack them. And so like that's terrifying. And so the next time you're around the dog, they may be really upset and not want to touch the dog because they think the dog's going to hurt them. So coping with life events, you're going to allow your child to be upset. You're going to ask what happened. Then you may say something positive about them. Reassure your child when it's appropriate. Don't feel like you have to problem solve if you can give them the opportunity to do that. And sometimes we can suggest something to cheer your child up. And then, of course, we're going to encourage the use of those coping skills that we've talked about. And then you're going to check in later with them. And if the problem exists, maybe you're going to seek some form of advice. And so a moving house is maybe an example of things you can do. And I can send you guys some examples if you guys need them. So moving, dealing with the loss, is another one. If that's something specific to you, totally reach out and I can send you the slide or we can talk about it. Let's talk about Triple P real quick. So Triple P in itself, this is funded by the Boone County Children's Service Board. That means anybody can receive services so long as you live in Boone County, and it is free to you so long as you live in Boone County. So that means you can meet with me for one-on-ones. And if there's a problem that you want to work through, you can do that with me. And again, it's free. So what does a one-on-one look like? So we can meet by Zoom or we can meet in person. My office is located on the south side of town, across from Walgreens on Forum. And so 2 methods of meeting. We usually meet for about 4 to 6 weeks. So the good news is this is a short term. It's not kind of like counseling. We're really doing some behavior change model. We're looking at what do you want to change. We put together a plan of action, and then you go work that plan. We come back and talk about things that went well, things that could have went better, and we kind of revise that plan until you tell me things are working well. And then you're kind of free to go. You're welcome to come back and work on anything. So sometimes people say, like, what's an example? We can talk about, like, if there is going to be a divorce or a separation, what does co-parenting look like? How can we best deal with our kids' emotions with that? How can we set them up for success? Maybe we're talking about potty training. We're talking about sleeping. We're talking about behaviors in dealing with our ADHD children or autistic children. Those are a couple that I see a lot. Understanding routines, being respectful, dealing with respect in the house, making friends, if your child's being bullied, like we can really kind of any topic that you think of, we can kind of set up a plan of action to help with. How do you get a hold of me? So you can reach me. The best way to reach me is by email. Hillary, I'll ask if you throw that in the email, please. But it's millercat@Missouri spelled out .edu. Sometimes I'm out of the office. In a case that someone doesn't have transportation, there is the ability to do a home visit if we need. So I may be out of the office, but I can always get my email. I do have voicemail here, but it doesn't always come to my computer. So if I'm not in the office, I may miss your call. But that is an option as well. The phone number is 573-884-3776. But again, the best way to reach me is by email. I think that's all that I can think of. All right, Hillary, you think I'm missing anything?
You did great. I, on the other hand, was chatting to just you instead of the entire group for quite a while. So I threw all of those book lists
Okay.
into the chat. And I also wanted to check one last time if there's anybody who needs a certificate for attending tonight. I made 3 and sent them to folks' emails. But if you do need one, just put your full name in the chat and I'll get one sent to you. But Catherine, thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
My parenting brain feels refreshed.
Good. That's always a positive.